The Asian American Pacific Islander Nurses Association of Nevada presents Healthy Mondays with AAPINA of Nevada. Start the week healthy and right with interesting conversations on living a healthy lifestyle. And now, your Healthy Mondays host, Dr. Mary Faye Axon Armstrong.
Hello, magandang gabi po sa inyong lahat. Good evening. Maraming salamat po for tuning in with us here at PHLV Radio, Healthy Monday with Asian American Pacific Islander Nurse Association of Nevada. I'm yours truly, Dr. Mary Faye Axon Armstrong, founding president of AAPINA of Nevada and professor at Roseman University College of Nursing. Tonight, every Monday is special. So tonight, I have my best friend forever and nursing colleague, Dr. Andrew Reyes, as our special guest. Hi, he is also an AAPINA of Nevada founding member and professor at UNLV School of Nursing. He is with us tonight to share his knowledge and expertise about PTSD. And June is PTSD Awareness Month. So welcome to Healthy Mondays, Dr. Reyes.
Welcome. Thank you for having me tonight, Dr. Armstrong.
Yeah, so we're just talking about we're all busy. We're back to our campus June 8th. We're still following the precautions, of course, wearing masks. We were given our special mask right there. And also washing hands, with soap and water, 20 seconds at least, and the social distancing, right? So, but tonight is our PTSD Awareness Month awareness. So maybe Dr. Andrew Reyes, if you can share with our listeners out there about your background and a little bit about yourself.
So I am an assistant professor at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, UNLV, and I am a nurse and I am a psychiatric nurse as well. I've been a psychiatric nurse for over 25 years, working in psychiatric hospitals, different psychiatric hospitals. And so my research is about resilience of people with PTSD, with post-traumatic stress disorder. So resilience is your ability to positively adapt in the midst of adversities. And so no matter how, the adversities that you are subjected to, you are able to come out feeling very well. And also you have positive outcomes. You just don't develop mental illness so easily. And so that's my research program of resilience of people who have been traumatized. Yeah.
So how did you start with working on PTSD as a nurse researcher?
So as a nurse researcher, so I am very much interested in looking at resilience. And so the one way of studying resilience is in people who have been traumatized, who have been subjected to a traumatic stress. And because many people, they don't develop PTSD. So as a matter of fact, in the American population, about 60 to 70% of the American population are subjected to a traumatic event. So when we say a traumatic event, it is something that, we have what we call a DSM, Diagnostic Statistic Manual. It's a manual for the psychiatrist, for psychiatric nurse practitioners, and how to diagnose mental disorders. So a traumatic event is an actual exposure to actual exposure to an actual or threatened death or serious injury or sexual violence. So many of us 60 to 70% of us are exposed to a traumatic event in our lifetime. But only 7% of us will develop PTSD. And part of that is because of our resilience. We're actually resilient more than we think we are. Right? We think we are kind of weak, but we are really strong emotionally, psychologically. We're able to actually, overcome these different kinds of stressors, especially those stressors that are really traumatic to us. And that is resilience. And so that's why I came to be interested in people with PTSD, because I really want to study how resilient they are.
So I think resiliency also equate to how best we respond to trauma and how best we react to it. And also, do you think our past experiences also is one of
Yeah,
the
there's
factors.
a lot of factors that affect the way how because the way we are resilient to traumatic events. A lot of in research is really mostly about our social support because for example, Filipinos have a lot of a big extended family, supportive family. We really capitalize on the importance of family. That we always say, a family that prays together stays together. So same thing as well, because we have a strong social family support, we are resilient. And I conducted a research study on Filipino American women, and there is really a low percentage of Filipino American women with PTSD, and part of that is because we have a strong family support. And so that's one key factor, one of the main factors that really makes us strong psychologically and emotionally. Mhm.
Did you find about belief in God or religion?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, that's another one as well. Your faith in God, but also even your faith community as well, right? So your belief in God, it really is a very major contributing factor for to being resilient to traumatic event. But also your faith community. The people that you go to church with, for example. Some denominations, for example, they only don't go to church every Sunday. They go to some prayer meetings as well. That creates some close bonds as well, and they encourage one another, and so that's kind of an example of a social support that helps us deal when there is a traumatic event.
Oh, just like at my church, we had on our women's ministry, we have like spring or fall women's night, and we even had Christmas tea
Yeah.
party.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
one of the questions I have, and I know I share these questions with you on behalf of our listeners out there, how can our listeners become aware about PTSD, and how can they detect early signs and symptoms at home setting?
you know um it's really hard. Sometimes it's really even hard. It's not like COVID-19, like we can prevent ourselves from COVID-19 from being exposed to people who have COVID-19. With PTSD it's a little different, right? It's not that we can prevent PTSD, because PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, to be diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder, you need to be exposed to a traumatic event. you know so sometimes, we're going along with our day. We think everything is going along, and all of a sudden, somebody attack us. We're in an elevator, for example, going to our office. Somebody attack us there, or you somebody rear-ended you, and then it caused you a traumatic event as well. So traumatic event happens to us, and it's hard to prevent that. And so our way is to, it's more about how we respond to those traumatic events. But most of us are able to overcome them. About only 7% are not able to deal with them. So it doesn't mean also that those people who develop PTSD doesn't mean that they are weak, they're emotionally weak, that they're psychologically weak, that they're not resilient. It only means to say that there's a part of your brain that is not able to process that traumatic event. Okay, so a traumatic event in PTSD, it doesn't necessarily mean that something happened to you. One way of we define a traumatic event is that you're directly exposed to a traumatic event. For example, somebody raped somebody attacked you, for example, or a combat soldier goes to Afghanistan, for example, and are exposed to different kinds of grotesque situations, for example. Another way of being another traumatic event is just by witnessing it. For example, if you have a friend who was attacked and you were actually there, you were not attacked, but you saw your friend being attacked, that could also traumatize you. Another way of being traumatized is just by learning about the occurrence of a traumatic event. For example, you get a call and you say, oh, you hurt, receive a news that one of your close relatives committed suicide, for example. So you just learn from it. So not directly experiencing it, just learning from it can also develop traumatic. It's also a traumatic event. And another traumatic event is also for health, healthcare workers, first responders, for example, who are repeated exposure to aversive situations. For example, a first responder who always respond every night to blood, for example, people who are abused, people who are attacked, for example, that can traumatize somebody as well. So it's hard to prepare yourself or prevent yourself from having PTSD because a traumatic event sometimes just happens. Um, it's not a traumatic event is not something that you're asking for, but it's not also something that you can just you can prevent. you know we live life, we have to live our life, but we live our life with risk as well. We cannot just stay in our bedroom and stay in our bed because we don't want to be exposed to any traumatic event. So it's really how we respond to different events and how the meaning that we acquire or associate with those stressful situations we have in our lives.
Thank you. I was just thinking in my mind, does PTSD had to be like physical violence? Because right now, in the midst of this global pandemic, we have a lot of healthcare providers, even
Yeah,
family, who
yeah,
witness. They see them. Even I think it was here in Las Vegas or in Hawaii where this young man contracted coronavirus,
yeah,
and then all of a sudden he's always in his ICU, and then I think he passed away.
yeah,
So I could imagine for all of the healthcare providers, nurses who are at bedside,
yeah.
witnessing
Death.
one after another, people, young, dying from this coronavirus. And it would be interesting later on when this pandemic subside and
Yeah,
do studies of how's everybody,
yeah.
how's everybody after this experience.
Yeah, because the work of a nurse, for example, most of the time we encounter death in our work as nurses. People who have cancer, for example, or those who are near in their end life, for example, end of life. People who are mostly adults, for example, older adults. So we kind of we prepare ourselves emotionally that there will be an end point in their life, but with this COVID-19, people can get traumatized by, we see young people dying every day. It's a repeated exposure of a traumatic, of an aversive stimuli, so that can also traumatize nurses. And so we won't see it now, but we will see it down the road, maybe a few months from now, or years from now, for example. We will see an increase of healthcare workers coming in to see mental health professionals complaining of some post-traumatic stress symptoms. Yeah.
So, um, so during this and COVID-19 pandemic, so what do we do as healthcare providers to prepare for PTSD?
Yeah, so it's really hard to about preparing it because, as I've said, traumatic event usually just happen to us, unexpectedly, and it overwhelms us. I think one way of preparing ourselves is that, you know um, it's as nurses or help first responders, for example, they didn't sign up for this. They didn't sign up that they will be encountered daily with traumatic event. They sign up to heal people, to care for people, to help other people. But we cannot say that it's part of our work that we will encounter people that will be dying. We will be encounter traumatic events. But what we can do to prepare is just really taking care of ourselves, getting enough sleep, exercising regularly, eating properly, looking after our medical issues, taking care of ourselves, cultivating our own support systems, talking to our families. For example, if you nurses, for example, encounter difficult situations at work, for example, they can, let them talk to their families about it. I just had a difficult shift today. So for us family members also is we should not let them, we should not stop them from talking about their concerns. Let them ventilate their feelings, their concerns, because it's their way to release their difficult emotions. So make time for your own life as well. Don't give up your friends, hobbies, or activities that make you happy. So keep on and keep on taking care of yourself. So those are just simple ways of preparing ourselves in the midst of these difficult times that we have right now.
Yeah, I remember when I was still working at Triple R Army Medical Center in the medical oncology unit.
Yeah.
And I was so happened to have a male nursing student with me, training with me, and it was a night shift.
Mhm.
And I was assigned to two young soldiers in their early 20s who contracted B cell lymphoma cancer. And so one of them, he was already told that there's really nothing they can do for him. And that instead of sending him back to Guam, I think it's from Guam, they decided that he would just stay at the hospital in Hawaii and would have the father come over to just be with him during the last days or last months of his life. And the nursing student with me, we were giving the first night shift that I was assigned to, we were giving out our medications at 10 o'clock. And the young man, the patient, asked me if I could pray with him.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, I still have four other patients that I need to give medications and I'll come back. Unfortunately, it's already 10 o'clock. So by the time I came back at his bedside, he was already asleep. So I
Mhm.
told the nursing student we'll go back the next day. So the next day we went back and we were able to finish everything we needed to before he fell asleep. And so we prayed with him.
Yeah.
And during our prayer with them, with a patient, the nursing student and I, we were just have tears
Mhm.
flowing and runny nose, and all. And so right after we prayed for this patient, I told the student, oh, let's take a break. So I went to the bathroom and I just cried.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then the student as well. So we happened to have a debriefing in that unit
Yeah.
because it's a cancer unit. So we do have some, some time that we gather all the staff and we sit down and debrief. How are you feeling today? How was that experience? Because I think that's how we can take care of ourselves. You mentioned about healthcare professionals taking care of themselves, especially during this global pandemic, with a
Mhm.
lot of people dying from the coronavirus, right?
Yeah, it's
So
very important that we talk about our difficult, issues, parts of our work lives, professional lives, that are difficult, and it's very important to talk about it and to release them, and it helps us process them more importantly. Yeah.
So you were mentioning about the culture, the culture and the support system, and then a lot of the since we are Aquino, Nevada, our Asian American Pacific Islander population. From your research, have you find out any other ethnic minorities that we need to pay attention to as far as PTSD prevalence of PTSD?
Yeah. Well, in terms of culture, culturally speaking, for example, Asians particularly, because this is about Asians as well, we really have a very strong stigma about mental illness. Um, even PTSD as well. We just don't talk about mental health issues, and I think we need to talk more about it. And in my research, we found out as well that especially Filipino families, they are they don't want to disclose their mental health issues outside their families, and part of that is because they want to preserve their dignity. And so because we came from the for example, Filipinos, for example, they are in a tight communities back in the Philippines, and so if you know something about this, a negative thing about this family, the reputation as a family is destroyed. So they think they don't keep information. They keep information within the family, and they don't reach out to others. Yeah. So.
And, and hoping that the family has enough support system for the person who is experiencing PTSD. Because I think I wanted to also emphasize, and I know you would do the same thing too, that the PTSD doesn't happen right away. There's like a sequence of events. Maybe it start with major depression, right? And
Mhm.
then from that, then it could stem into that into the PTSD. Can you share a little bit about that progression?
Yeah. So what happens in PTSD is that you're going along with your life very well, and all of a sudden something happened to you. You were attacked, you were raped, or you learned somebody who committed suicide, and your brain has not don't doesn't have that capacity to process it. You feel overwhelmed. It leaves you overwhelmed. And so usually it takes about 6 months before you develop symptoms of PTSD. And some symptoms of PTSD are like depression. For example, symptoms of, you feel depressed, you're not able to, you have difficulty experiencing positive feelings. You used to watch movies before, you used to do things that were pleasurable, and you're no longer doing that. There are symptoms of depression. You sometimes, another symptom of PTSD is that you get um, startled easily. You're very guarded. For example, you don't sit in a room where your back is towards the door. You're always you're irritable. You have difficulty concentrating. And another key symptom of PTSD is that you have this recurring intrusive memory. So for example, you were attacked, then all of us, then this memory of being attacked keeps on coming back to you. Or there's also flashback. A flashback is something like you're reliving the traumatic event, or you have nightmares. But one of the most dangerous symptoms of PTSD is what we call the avoidance symptom. The avoidance symptoms are those that makes this PTSD worse. So avoidance symptoms is that you try to avoid triggers. For example, if somebody was raped in a dark alley, for example, you're trying to avoid dark places anymore. If you were attacked in an elevator, for example, you are trying to avoid elevators. And that is normal. But the other part of avoidance is you're avoiding internal feelings, or you're avoiding thoughts and emotions that are associated with that a traumatic event. So, for example, when you were attacked, you felt this, uh, or for example, you felt this fear inside you, and so whenever you go somewhere, you have that sensation. For example, every time I go to a place that looks like where I was attacked, I feel this emotion. So and that is a very uncomfortable emotion. So in order for you to avoid that emotion, you try to numb that emotion by, let's say, drinking alcohol, taking Xanax or Ativan. So the difficult part of avoidance symptoms is that you tend to avoid other things. Avoidance begets avoidance. So, for example, if you were attacked in a private location, in a secluded location, and then you go to a crowded place and you saw somebody who resembles the person that attacks you, but it's a crowded place. Now you begin to avoid crowded place as well. So you're now avoiding secluded place, you're avoiding crowded place. So it becomes more worse. Your PTSD becomes more worse. And so part of this PTSD awareness month is being able to how do we avoid, which it's normal to avoid difficult feelings. When we are very depressed, we don't want to feel depressed. We try to watch movie, we try to drink alcohol, but uh, we need that's I think this is the key awareness that I really want to impart for this PTSD awareness month, that avoidant behaviors, when we try to avoid um, difficult feelings, or we try to avoid, avoidance symptoms are those that makes PTSD worse.
So, in other words, what I'm hearing you saying is that for our listeners out there, if a loved one you see some of the symptoms that Dr. Andrew Reyes is sharing with us, that call for help and
Yeah,
be
seek
able to
help.
identify it, and then also the type of therapy that I guess this is a question for you, Dr. Reyes. What
Yeah.
would be the type of therapy that you can provide to someone who is going through PTSD?
Well, it's kind of there are different kinds of therapies for PTSD, but I think the best first course of action is to really reach out and seek help, and it's either to your family doctor, or to a psychiatric nurse practitioner, or to a psychiatrist. So that's a key. It's the first step. It's the first stepping stone. Is to really reach out for help, and it's partly, especially for Asians, for example, Filipinos and other. It's generally within the Asian culture we really stigmatize mental illness, and so we really, it's not, we need help. Reach out and seek for help, and then later on down the road, you'll figure out the best therapy, the best medications for you.
And sometimes the person himself or herself is really not realizing that that is going on. There
Yeah.
is this unawareness of what is really going on for yourself. And so, if you have a loved one who you think is experiencing PTSD, then that is something that you can help that person be
Yeah.
aware of what's really happening, and encourage to for them to seek help, because there are a lot of resources out there in the community.
Yeah. So it's always about a lot of it is self awareness, and I just don't feel happy anymore, even when I am around people that I know I love. My mood keeps on changing rapidly. In minutes, I can go from feeling really happy to really down or terrified. I don't have energy anymore that I used to. I feel tired when I wake up in the morning. I notice that I'm less talkative than I used to be. So aside from being self-aware, also listen to what other people are telling about you. Oh, what, Andrew, I don't see you more a lot anymore. What's going on, right? And and try to be open about it. People's comments about you, and just being more aware of what other people are telling about you as well.
I'm sitting here and I realized I did have a mild PTSD experience. I thought it was phobia. I was bitten by a puppy. Uh, I mean,
Oh,
accidentally, because I stepped on it while it was on its back. I was
yeah,
trying to eat some mangoes, and the puppy is underneath the table. And so
mm,
I stepped on it on its tummy, and it just bit me like this.
yeah,
So in the Philippines, they don't have rabies,
yeah.
shots. So I was the one who had to get the shots on my spinal cord for, I think, 21 days.
Mhm.
I had to go to my grandpa to get the shot on my back before going to school. And even now, if I don't know the dog, if I freeze. Like I would just stay there until somebody takes me to walk.
And
So
then,
I
well,
think it's a form
yeah,
of
and you
PTSD.
also avoid, right? Oh, you avoid parties that have dogs. This friend of mine have dogs, so I don't want to go there. Or you're afraid of dogs, so you're avoiding situations where there are dogs as well, right? And so the more you avoid, the more your mind doesn't have that opportunity to deal with that traumatic event.
And it's just I guess I'm aware of it because we will be
Yes.
there was a in my old place there was a dog park. It's a park, but somehow a lot of people who go there brings their dog. So one day I said, I have to exercise. So I went in there and I was about to get out of my car, and I couldn't get out of my car because all these dogs with their owners were walking around, and I did realize right there, okay, I am still not over it. and then still, traumatized with that, being
Yeah.
bitten by the dog and having to have 21 shots on my back.
Yeah.
So I guess that's a classic example of a mild PTSD.
Yeah, it could just be a mild PTSD. You were general overall. You were able to recover from it. Most of us are exposed to a traumatic event, but many of about a few of us too as well are not able to overcome it. They continue to have symptoms months after the exposure, after the traumatic event. They continue to have nightmares and flashbacks. They have depression. So those are the people that we need to reach out, and they are those who have PTSD.
And I have one last, time flies when we're having
I
fun.
know, yeah. So
Yeah, so there's this one last question, but I think you have answered it a little bit earlier.
yeah,
So, how do we move forward and protect ourselves from PTSD? Or can we actually protect ourselves and loved ones from PTSD?
yeah. So it's again because PTSD is caused by a traumatic event. And a traumatic event usually is something we don't expect happens to us. We go along our day and something really happens to us, and we're not able to process that. It's very overwhelming for us. So, but what we can do is develop our resilience so that when we are exposed to a traumatic event, we are able to overcome it easily. Just like when there's a typhoon coming, for example, a hurricane, we prepare our house, we barricade our windows with wood and like that in order to so that there won't be any damage. So, and one way of really making yourself more resilient is to really just take care of yourself. Have social support. Don't abandon your friends, and go out with them. Do things that you like doing. So get enough sleep, eat properly, eat well, and take care of your medical issues. Yeah.
And have a robust support system where you have constantly someone that you can call on and rely to. Hey, let's have a drink, or let's
Uh-huh.
let's go
Exactly.
hiking, or let's have
That's right.
breakfast.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, thank you so much, Dr. Reyes, for
Yeah.
sharing with
You're
us
welcome.
your
Thank you for
knowledge.
having me, Dr. Armstrong.
But there is one more question that I always ask
Okay.
my guests. Do you have a word of wisdom for our listeners out there in regards to PTSD?
So, what I would just say is that don't stop people from talking. If somebody wants to talk to you about their issues and concerns, listen to them. I think be open minded about them. Don't give them advice, but just listen to them, validate them. So I think the key word there is be compassionate. Be caring.
There's I taught therapeutic communication class, and there is this one skill that we are using when we talk to our clients or patients. It's called reflection of feeling. Sometimes when someone talking stories with you, but you can tell from the words they're sharing with you that there is a feeling that they are not identifying.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's stories and they're saying this, but those are elements of being jealousy, for example, is a feeling, right?
Yeah.
Or sadness or bitterness. And then the technique is to identify it for him. Oh, so what I hear you saying is that you feel sad, or what I hear you saying is you feel mad, or you hate the situation or something. So somehow, if you have a friend or someone talking stories with you, and you pick up a feeling that somehow this person is not
Yeah.
verbalizing, then you just say, "Oh, it sounds like you feel this."
Yeah.
So somehow, and then the person would say, "Yeah, that's how
Yes.
I'm feeling."
Because sometimes that's what we all need. We just need an ear, somebody to listen to us. And oftentimes people, especially those who have mental health issues or those who have been traumatized, they don't need an advice. What they need is your listening ear. Don't tell them that, oh, you're lucky because it could have been worse, for example. That's shutting them down. Or this
Minimizing
is
their
what you
pain.
should do. Just listen to them and let them talk about their feelings.
Well, thank you again, Dr. Reyes, and once again, PHLV Radio, for partnering with us, for bringing this information to our listeners out there. Remember, listeners, every Monday is a healthy Monday. Aloha.
The Asian American Pacific Islander Nurses Association of Nevada has just brought you Healthy Mondays with AAPINA of Nevada.